Hey everyone, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about, actually setting your camera up to take a photo. So both the exposure and sort of the things I look for when taking a photo. So I have a 24-70 here on my Nikon D800. This is a very standard kit lens, for a lot of events. You don't want to be messing around with a lot of primes, and so this camera is sort of your general all-purpose lens. That being said, I love prime glass. I love shooting with it, and for certain situations, it works great. But for this instance, I'm just going to use this lens and take some photos with you. So off the bat, there's a few things I like to set up. So we're outdoors, a lot of light. I can shoot at pretty much any f-stop, any ISO I want to. There's enough light for that. So I took my ISO down to 200. You can go to 100. People say there's different ISOs that are best. I haven't noticed the difference. I mean, you can really get into the fine details and see somewhat of a difference. But really, it's not until you get over up to 1600 and above that you start to get noise and whatnot. So I set it to 200. Feel free to pick whatever you want. 400 is pretty standard. As you get less light, obviously you start bumping that up. The next thing I'm going to do is I want to shoot at f4. That's sort of a sweet spot for this lens. I don't need crazy shallow depth of field. If you want really shallow depth of field, first off, I'm going to probably shoot at 70mm. That alone gives me shallow depth of field. Now, if I go and shoot at 24, that's much wider, and I have to get really close to something to get that shallow depth of field. So maybe you want to go to 2.8. If you have a prime lens, you can go even shallower, and it can give a cool look. But for my purposes, I want to shoot at f4. So there you have two key components for setting exposure, your ISO and your f-stop. I know that I have a lot of light, so I choose to shoot a low number ISO like 200, and I want to shoot f4. I could shoot f16 if I wanted. I could shoot 2.8 if I wanted, because with photography, or with photo at this point, I can just crank my shutter up. So just looking here, I'm looking at my light meter. I'm at 1/4000th of a second shutter speed, and just, let's see, it's pretty well exposed. So that looks like the setting I'm going to go with. Now let's just say, for example, I want a little bit more in focus. I'll stop down to, let's say, an f11. So that's quite a reduction of light. My light meter is clearly saying that I'm underexposed now. So I'll slow down my shutter speed, and I'm going to 1/400th now. And that looks like it should be plenty of light. And yep, got plenty of light there. So just gonna take a little photo to show you an example. And so that's at f11. Go back down to f4. Take my shutter to 1/4000th. And both are looking good. Now, one thing of this image is that the foreground is slightly in the shade, and the background has some direct sun hitting it. And as I look at the image out here in the field, I'm thinking, well, is anything too dark? Is anything too light? Because come, Lightroom or whatever post-editing software you use, you can pull information out. But if you're too crushed in the blacks or too overexposed in the lights, you're not going to be able to pull information and still have it look clean. So you want to make sure you're kind of neutral across the board. This one looks pretty good. It's a little heavy in the shadows, so maybe I'll go to 1/2000th of a shutter, get it a little overexposed. And now everything looks like it's well exposed. Nothing's blown out though, so that's good. And I should be happy with that image. When we take it into Lightroom or post-editing, we'll be able to play with a lot of those colors, the saturation, the contrast, all those types of things. But otherwise, that's all there is to it. So really, again, just to recap, set your ISO, set your f-stop to what you want to shoot at. Depending on the situation, you might need to adjust those, but because you're shooting photos, really just crank that shutter speed up. Now, if you're trying to get slow shutter during a day like this, you'll have to crank your f-stop up. As the light goes down, you might need a more sensitive ISO. So those are all things that you sort of play with. But remember, you're shooting digital, you can test. Try taking a photo at f4 at that 1/2000th, and then try 1/8000th. You know, try different things, see what it looks like, and then take them into your computer. You can delete them later. You can save just the one you like, but at least you can see the differences of those different settings. So hope this was helpful. See you in the next section.